done? What came over me? Who am I? It was wonderful. I loved every minute of it.
Sally Field, two-time Oscar winner and America's beloved face of Hollywood, once made the entire country believe she had it all: talent, tenderness, and a smile that always felt warm. But behind every round of applause was a woman who had been belittled, wounded, and at times left to stand on set like a shadow, while the lights, the cameras, and even the lines of dialogue turned their backs on her. At 78, she no longer holds on to the things that once hurt her. Now, she has finally opened up about the people who made her feel small, out of place, and unworthy of being heard. Some even humiliated her. The last one on that list will completely surprise you. And once you know what really happened, you'll never look at Sally Field or Hollywood the same way again.
He always loved me in Gidget. And I thought, he loved me in Gidget? And I also said we were a perfect match of flaws.
Right.
We went together very well, but not necessarily for the right reasons.
The Heartbreaker, Burt Reynolds. They were once the definition of a perfect couple. Sally Field, bright, intelligent, and sincere. Burt Reynolds, charming, confident, and irresistibly magnetic. When they met in 1977 on the set of Smokey and the Bandit, all of Hollywood held its breath. The pairing of America's sweetheart and the sexiest man alive didn't just create cinema, it created an illusion. Everyone believed Sally was living a sweet dream. But that dream, as Sally later revealed, was in truth a soft trap wrapped in deadly allure. Nearly 5 years together, they loved and also hurt each other to the bone. She once described, "From the moment I walked in, he started controlling me. We were a perfect match, in our flaws." Burt's overwhelming fame became a tool to manipulate his environment, and Sally, through a subconscious habit rooted in a childhood lacking love, stepped into that cycle without even realizing it. At first, she was drawn to his rebel spirit, his wild confidence, and his primal appeal. We'd only known each other for 3 or 4 days, but it felt like 4 years, Sally shared on Good Morning America. It was an instant connection, and also the beginning of a relationship built on dependency. One caregiver, one who needed to be cared for. Burt made her feel attractive, desired. "I wanted to be everything he wanted," she told Closer Weekly. But then she began to lose herself. "I no longer existed. I dressed for him, walked for him, lived for him. He proposed to me many times, but I knew his heart wasn't really in it. If we got married, we would have only made each other miserable." In her memoir, In Pieces, Sally described Burt as a distant, controlling man who often interrupted her when she spoke, making her gradually believe her voice had no worth. He controlled everything from her work to her behavior, grew cold when she expressed opinions, and often punished her with silence. Even on television appearances, he was always the one up front, both literally and figuratively. And behind the camera smile were nights she felt invisible inside her own relationship. Years after they parted, Burt seemed haunted by Sally. "I loved Sally Field, and I think I let the love of my life slip away," he told Vanity Fair in 2015. In 2016, he told the Daily Mail, "She was the love of my life, and I wrecked that relationship. That sense of loss never goes away. I would really love to have a conversation with her, but for Sally, the emotion took another form." "I was relieved he wasn't alive to read the book," she candidly told the New York Times. "I didn't want to hurt him any further." She still remembers and still aches, but not because the love is gone, but because that love made her lose herself. Perhaps the most painful part of the relationship wasn't the ending. It was the absence of true understanding. "I don't think he ever really knew who I was," she once said. And on the path of growing up, she learned a hard but necessary lesson: that loving someone doesn't mean becoming who they want you to be. It means learning to recognize and respect their differences. Even when that's difficult, even when it hurts. Only then can love exist without consuming you. Sally Field once loved Burt Reynolds with her whole heart, with tender hope and a deep instinct to be protected. But sometimes love also means walking away. To the world, Burt was the bandit. To Sally, he was a wound, the heartbreak she never saw coming, and the greatest lesson of her life. In 1981, Sally Field agreed to star in Backroads, hoping for a sincere and creatively fulfilling collaboration. It was a film about two broken people who accidentally meet and rediscover love on a dusty, lonely journey. But from the very first days of filming, she realized she was working with a co-star who had no interest in connection. Tommy Lee Jones didn't say hello. He didn't make conversation. He didn't engage in any interaction outside the frame. When the camera stopped rolling, he walked away. When Sally tried to talk to him, he stayed silent. Every exchange was cold, indifferent, as if she didn't exist. "We were supposed to be playing two broken people learning how to love," Sally recalled, "but I was just acting, alone." She described the experience as cold and completely unsupported. When the characters called for deep emotional connection, Sally was met with emptiness. Not because he couldn't act, but because he chose not to share emotions with his scene partner. There were no fights, no loud arguments. But the extended silence was enough to make her feel excluded from the very film she was helping create. "There wasn't a single moment when I felt I was being treated like a person," she said. And sadly, that lack of connection wasn't just something Sally felt. It was reflected in the public reaction as well. Some critics, upon seeing the film, sarcastically wrote that Backroads tried to make viewers believe Alabama had a prostitution rate of 1 in every 10 residents, and that the sound effects artist must have been exhausted from 9 million high-heel footsteps from Sally Field. Another review bluntly stated that although director Martin Ritt was usually trustworthy, every effort in this film is poor, and it's clear that Sally Field and Tommy Lee Jones have absolutely no chemistry. The truth was, there was nothing to build chemistry on. Sally tried to connect, but Jones didn't. And the result was a film that lost its soul, while she, despite being the leading star, ended up feeling like an outsider in her own creative space. Backroads wasn't a spectacular success, but for Sally, it left an unforgettable memory, not because of the role, but because of the feeling of total disconnection. She never publicly attacked Tommy Lee Jones. But when asked about people who had hurt her on set, his name remained among the first she mentioned, for the kind of quiet coldness that made others feel dismissed. If you believe that artists don't just grow from roles, but also from the wounded silences and the times they go unseen, share your thoughts below. All of us have had to learn how to grow up through loneliness. The Saboteur, Robert Blake. In 1972, Say Goodbye, Maggie Cole was expected to be a turning point in Sally Field's television career. It was a special ABC production in which she played a widowed doctor who relocates to work at a rundown clinic in inner-city Chicago, a profound role that marked her effort to mature as an actress. Her co-star was Robert Blake, a respected talent in the industry, once nominated for an Emmy. He was known for his extreme method acting and had made a name for himself through gritty, unforgettable roles. But alongside that talent came something else: instability, unpredictability, and an ego no one could manage. Sally stepped into the project hoping for a professional collaboration. What she got instead was chaos. Blake didn't follow the script. He changed his lines on the fly, walked out halfway through rehearsals, and when he returned, he was a completely different person. Sometimes cold, sometimes furious, sometimes so detached it was as if the entire crew didn't exist. Once, he screamed in the middle of a scene, leaving everyone stunned. Sally didn't just have to act. She had to be the emotional anchor of the entire crew, holding things together, soothing tensions, and bracing herself against an uncooperative co-star. She once recalled, "I didn't just have to play the role. I had to keep everything from falling apart. Even though most scenes were completed, ABC never aired the film a second time. The project, once hoped to usher in a new era for Sally and the entire team, silently fell apart, all because of one person who couldn't control his behavior. Afterward, Sally took away a hard-earned lesson. Genius is no excuse for bad behavior. She swore she would never again tolerate the kind of difficult artist masked as greatness. To Hollywood, Robert Blake might have been a talented actor. But to Sally, he was the one who shattered everything and never looked back. The Bitter Rival, Shirley MacLaine. Steel Magnolias was a film about love, loss, and the strength of women, but behind the scenes it was a quiet battle between two generations of actresses. Shirley MacLaine was already a Hollywood icon at the time, an Oscar winner with 3 prior nominations and a reputation for emotionally rich roles. But she was also known for having an outsized ego, the kind of old-school star unaccustomed to sharing the spotlight. Sally Field, on the other hand, radiant, composed, and already a 2-time Oscar winner, just wanted to tell an emotional story with care and honesty. They didn't hate each other, but each embodied a completely different approach. One lived deeply in her characters, the other tried to control everything from tone to timing in every scene. Sally once recalled a climactic moment in the film when her character Malin breaks down after the death of her daughter, a devastating scene that left the entire set in silence. But just as everyone held their breath in anticipation of that raw moment, Shirley interrupted with an ill-timed joke about the character's hair color. Over and over again, the director had to pause, reset, and start all over 17 times. Can you imagine? One actress pushing herself into a mother's deepest grief, fully immersed in heartbreak, while the other, standing right beside her, kept bursting out laughing over a slightly crooked wig. A drama on screen, a sitcom behind it. It wasn't because she forgot her lines. Shirley just kept interjecting with jokes at the wrong moment, as if she couldn't stand someone else being the center of attention while she wasn't. And it wasn't the first time. Shirley was famously controlling. She once described co-star Deborah Winger in terms of endearment as aggressive and disrespectful. Yet Shirley herself had long been accused of interrupting scenes, cutting off actors, and testing co-stars in odd ways, from icy stares to condescending behavior. She even claimed in her memoir that Deborah farted in her face, as a declaration of war between two egos too large to share space. Shirley's career was never dull. She publicly stated that she'd lived in Atlantis, encountered aliens, and communicated with spirits during meditation. She was smart, charismatic, but unpredictable, and frequently turned everything around her into chaos, even when she didn't mean to. When asked about working with Shirley, Sally responded gently, but pointedly, "Shirley is a chaotic cloud. You never know if it's going to rain or just block out the light." In a film meant to portray emotional bonds between women that could move an audience to tears, the saddest truth was this: sometimes one person just wants to tell the story, while the other only wants to be noticed. Indeed, some backstage battles are more exhausting than the tragedies on screen. The Silent Manipulator, James Woods. Kiss Me Goodbye sounds like a light-hearted, funny story. But for Sally Field, it was a set filled with pressure, where James Woods didn't enter with charm, but with a kind of intelligence that made people tread carefully. From the very beginning, Woods didn't come off as hot-tempered or rude. On the contrary, he was calm, sharp, and dissected everything as if he were the actual director. He analyzed the script, commented on others' performances, and didn't hesitate to question Sally's capability. After one tense scene, he leaned toward her and said, "I don't think you're really invested in this role." No yelling, no accusations, just a cold, calculated strike at her self-worth, subtle, implied, and deeply cutting. Sally didn't respond. She had worked with loud, arrogant, even crude men before, But James Woods was a different kind of opponent, intelligent, precise, and someone who knew how to make you doubt yourself. Hollywood once called him a genius actor with eyes like razors. But behind the camera, those very eyes made people feel constantly judged. Every gesture, every emotion, every breath. There was no shouting, just a presence that made others shrink. And it wasn't just Sally who felt it. Woods was once accused by actress Amber Tamblyn of hitting on her when she was just 16. Elizabeth Perkins held up his name during a Me Too march, as a symbol of the kind of quiet power that makes people afraid to speak up. In interviews, Woods has always denied the accusations, but his reputation as an unpredictably brilliant actor never disappeared. Sally once said she didn't feel angry with Woods, just disappointed that after so many years in the business, she could still be diminished by the gaze of a man who believed he understood everything better than a woman ever could. The film came and went, but that feeling of being silently manipulated, of being undermined through half-compliments, lingered. To the world, James Woods is a misunderstood talent. To Sally, he was a dangerously clever man, the kind that made her feel she had to stay guarded even within her own scenes. Have you ever worked with someone who made you question your own feelings? The unexpected villain, Dustin Hoffman. This was the biggest surprise. They never starred in a film together. Just one audition. But it was enough to leave a scar. Dustin Hoffman was already a legend then, with an Oscar, Rain Man, and the revered title of method acting genius that Hollywood adored. But along with that fame came something few dared to say outright. He was extremely difficult to work with. Not in a loud, angry way, but in a cold, controlling way, the kind that makes you question yourself after just a few words. During that audition, Sally had barely read a few lines before he cut her off. He corrected her delivery, emphasized certain words as if he were the director, not her scene partner. Sally said she felt like a child trying to prove herself, not an Emmy-winning actress. A few days later, she heard the truth. Hoffman had intentionally sabotaged the audition, not because she wasn't good enough, but because he didn't want to work with a woman he couldn't control. And then she understood. The deepest kind of hurt doesn't come from failure. It comes when someone deliberately takes away your chance because they believe they operate on a different level. In truth, Hoffman was known for his intellect and intense immersion in roles. But that very intensity led many female co-stars, from Meryl Streep to younger actresses, to speak out about how far he went, controlling, making inappropriate jokes, and even facing allegations of sexual misconduct. Sally wasn't the victim of physical behavior, but she was the victim of another kind of violence, quieter, colder. It was the condescension of a man the world called a genius. Just one audition, but it showed her a truth that was anything but sweet. Not everyone in Sally Field's career made her brace herself just to survive. Amid the cold, controlling, and dismissive experiences, there were still kind, professional relationships, people who lifted her up at just the right moment, allowing her to preserve her dignity and love for acting. Robin Williams, her co-star in Mrs. Doubtfire, was one of them. To most audiences, Robin was the tireless comedian, but to Sally, he was a rare colleague who always paid attention to others' emotions. In scenes that demanded emotional depth, he didn't try to steal the spotlight. Instead, he gently held back, listened, and pushed Sally into the space where she could fully shine. He made me feel absolutely respected, as an actor and as a person, she shared. In the loud chaos of Hollywood, Robin stood quietly by her side, never letting her carry the weight alone. Martin Ritt, who directed Norma Ray, Murphy's Romance, and Back Roads, was another kind of anchor. Ritt didn't treat her as a female actor who needed shaping, but as a true artist who deserved trust. He was the one who saw her transformative potential from the very beginning, offering her the chance to break free from the good girl image television had boxed her into. "Sally can act with her eyes without a single line," he once said. A simple but profound recognition. To Rit, filmmaking wasn't a stage for ego. It was a space where wounded souls could be told through art. Even with Julia Roberts, her younger co-star in Steel Magnolias, the relationship carried a quiet kind of healing. Sally entered the project as the seasoned one, but instead of asserting authority, she chose to observe and empathize. In Julia, she saw a younger version of herself, uncertain, eager, fragile, and their connection became a rare example of women supporting each other on a set often steeped in competition. There were differences, but the kind that were heard and respected. It was people like Robin, Rit, and Julia, in small, quiet moments, who helped Sally hold on to her belief that Hollywood isn't only a place where people lose themselves, it can also be where they find themselves again. And if men like Burt Reynolds, Tommy Lee Jones, or Robert Blake once made her feel alone even within the frame, then people like Robin and Rit reminded her that true companionship doesn't need to be loud, just sincere. Thanks to them, she came to understand a simple truth that only a long journey could reveal. An actor doesn't grow only through being hurt, but also through the moments when they are loved the right way. Sally Field didn't share these stories to accuse anyone. She doesn't aim to damage reputations, nor does she need to justify her past. She tells them to peel off the layers that Hollywood once draped over her. A gentle woman, composed, always agreeable, and always yielding. But behind that image were 6 encounters, 6 relationships, each name tied to its own inner conflict. From subtle insults to dismissive glances, from being cut off in auditions to years of invisible control inside emotional entanglements. These are not dramatic headlines begging for attention. They are a quiet but fierce journey to hold on to self-respect, to continue existing as an artist with integrity in an industry that doesn't always value that. And over time, Sally Field came to understand something not everyone gets to realize in a life devoted to the arts. No two people are the same. Some scene partners are gentle support, others are constant challenges, and some will hurt you. But if you stop only at the hurt, you'll never grow. The greater truth is learning to recognize difference and to respect even the hardest ones. That's not submission. That's a conscious maturity, a true professional's strength. And at 70, looking back, she no longer needs praise or validation. What she needs is to be heard, because even silence has its limits. Have you ever walked away from a working relationship that hurt you, but also helped you understand yourself better? Have you ever felt you had to toughen up just to be accepted, simply because you weren't like them? If so, leave a comment. Perhaps Sally Field's journey is a mirror reflecting a part of your own story.